Hi, I'm Amit Gupta. I'm the founder and editor-in-chief of stirworld.com. But I would actually thank Raja Ravi Verma and Yamini Roy, who actually brought that art to a public realm. And that was my first introduction to art, looking at those calendars, which my mom and dad used to love putting it up in every room of a living space. And and that used to be that used to be the only form of art which most of my friends and colleagues were exposed to. That turned into photography calendars, that turned into tabletop calendars, that turned into looking at, and then suddenly you start looking at the same forms on matchboxes, and you start looking at the same forms on a cover of a branded product packaging or a incense stick packaging. That itself was a trigger point in terms of how I have been looking at from my childhood days. And we have Zarina Hashmi and Aisha Sultana and Parul Gupta, who using lines and geometries and spaces, and the way they are, for them, layering of spaces and layering of lines and geometries is also creating a space or visual space in your own mind, and that is an amazing format of art. I mean, I'm an ardent fan of all the three names I've just said because I relate to Zarina's work or Parul Gupta's work in today's generation, and even Aisha Sultana's work, because there's amazing interplay of geometry, an amazing interplay of play of movement and shadows, and the way they've cut through sections of spaces and presented in just simple sketches and lines and intersections of various geometric pattern. Every piece of molding, every piece of carving, every jali which you used to see used to grow on you. And every time you used to revisit that space, there's something new you will notice, either on the inlay on the marble or on the way the jali is cut and the way it's light falling into the space or falling out of the space. The play of interaction, the intersection of light, the intersection of sound in most of the cases. You go to Sikandar of Agra, you can actually experience sound as an art form where you can sit in one corner of the two walls being intersecting and talk to somebody across 100 meters by just whispering. That is an art form too. I mean, and that's when the minor nuances of how sound, music, art which you perceive by seeing, art which you perceive by listening, and art you perceive by experiencing. That became my introduction to amazing what I call jugalbandi between art, architecture, music, and today I don't see a huge difference between these three forms. They're all creative expression of those kind. Art is the architecture of an idea minus the engineering. While an artist manifests an idea on the canvas, the architect visualizes or actualizes a vision into a form and space. And marrying art to science, elevating the idea into what we call state of being or a state of multidimensional existence and experience. And where architecture merges with art and consequently art merges with architecture and design, can have a very blurring line, at the same time can have a very distinct line. I mean, those structural joints and modular units, which contain aspects of structure as a whole, or hold things in place, at times may become far too far-sighted, which means you will lose the attention of functional detail of an architectural form, and the the creative idea or the central core of an idea of an architecture um, will will alienate itself from the functionality and the engineering behind the functionality. And you have many examples like this. I mean, I can quote Frank Gehry's Disney Concert Hall, or Zaha Hadid's Opera House in Ganja, or Rem Koolhaas's Casa de Musico, where the core idea of architecture and functionality got alienated. The engineering got a bit diluted, where the structure as a whole got diluted and became more of an art form and became more of a canvas, you know. But at the same time, you can't say that architecture is not art. There are enough and more buildings. Well, like we used to say, the 21st century, anything which is cultural um, as a building can be considered as an art form. You have Azerbaijan Baku Center by Zaha Hadid there, or you have your Le Corbusier's Notre Dame Museum, which could be pure sculptural in form and at the same time functional, at the same time can be expressed as an art form. So sometimes it's a constant debate within my own mind is how do you alienate art and architecture? While art could be primarily a creative expression without any functionality, without any engineering or science involved in it, while architecture has a lot of logic and maths involved in it. But both of them have a very strong point of view, as you were saying, very strong political dialogue and a very strong social dialogue and very strong word or voice, which both can express. Yes, in one you have to imbibe the space and visit the space and go by absorb the space and absorb the way the space is built around you, or you experience it around you, while the art is something which you just experience from an audience perspective, where you're seeing it on the wall, or though in today's case you can actually immerse into immersive art, which is a new format of art which is evolving over past few years. And then therefore I see the lines are very, very blurred. At the same time, a sculptural form of an architecture, which may be serving a purpose in terms of its functionality, but at the same time can be very meditative. Every time you go to Baha'i temple or the Lotus temple in Delhi, and just sit there by the way the sound and the way the light and the way the movement of air happens, it could be extremely meditative. So is I was talking. I mean, and it's not just in today's architecture. Go back Sun Temple of Konark, where a single beam of light picks up the Garbsthal, and you experience that, or you watch it, and you can watch it till the time light stays on central core. It is meditative. Today, Marina Tabassum did a mosque in Bangladesh, where with the movement of sun, you see beams of light cutting through and coming into the mosque. While you're sitting there, it's purely meditative. The way that architecture is narrating story through sunlight, narrating story through the sound of environment around you, narrating story through the people who maybe experience the same space with you, and that is an experience which could give you goosebumps, and therefore it also could calm you down, and it's very peaceful to be in some of these spaces. So I think architecture and architects can create an amazing meditative space. I mean, your own home, when you're designing and you're putting a little corner where you would like to sit and find peace every morning, is a combination of function, form, engineering, science behind it. And therefore, that's one corner which relates to you and talks to you, and that becomes your introspection and retrospection space. And that is a function of design and architecture. Today, when people design, as I say, architect design nouns, windows, ceiling, floors, but these nouns come from verbs which are life itself: looking, eating, meeting. And this is the Pritzker Prize winner, architect Alejandro Alvana, who made a affordable housing project in Chile. It's an apt example of how architecture is a leveler when it comes to human emotions and emotions and human well-being is being talking to. I mean, we talk about senses like looking, eating, and meeting, and that's what window, ceiling, and floors do to you. They provide an environment for looking, eating, and meeting. And architecture and art, therefore, both have to evolve if they want to communicate to this adapting, changing human behavior. You cannot be sitting in isolation today because ultimately, whatever you're creating, you may be creating an artwork, which could be a simple canvas, or you may be creating or taking a piece of land as your canvas and building around building a multi-dimension form. You are actually have to be relating to what a human behavior is adapting itself and changing. And today, and that's the reason you see the language is changing. Art curators and artists themselves have changed the language of expression, and that's the reason one of the critical subject we at STIR pick up, which is a new media art, which is an interactive and immersive media art, and that is what is keeping pace with what this generation is looking for. Gone are the days when there is art on the wall or there is sculpture in the garden, and your generation is going to relate to it. Today, globally, and it has started happening in the country as well, in India as well, where um, artists and curators and galleries and all the art custodians are warming up towards new media art, are warming up towards uh, an art where an audience can interact with, are warming up and towards the art where audience can immerse itself into it, a Martin Bass installation and relate to it, and get into the installation. You see James Turrell, who's one of the biggest illusion artists today. He's by far he's creating an artwork which we hope he finishes it. Would be the largest man-made artwork in the world, where he's taken a dead uh, volcano or a crater, and it's creating an art inside that with the interplay of natural light and artificial light. What is it? It's basically that people will go inside and experience and absorb into a multidimensional format of art, and that is what this generation is looking for. Art for sure is not functional. Art has no science behind, and art has no process of it has a process of creation, but it does not need to serve any purpose. But for me, what it needs to serve, that it needs to communicate a certain thought as simply as possible. And I thank Kiran Nada Museum of Art for providing this platform for art and design conversation.